So let's jump into patterns by talking about our rectangular pattern option. Now the rectangular pattern can be done in 2D sketches or with 3D features, and we're going to go over both of those here today. Let's start by going over the rectangular pattern in a 2D sketch. So I have open here just a couple of shapes that we're going to be working with. So I'm going to go into my sketch 1 and edit sketch. Let's start with this bottom rectangle here on the left. So we can see I have a rectangle drawn. It's fully constrained. All of my lines are black. And then we can also see that we have a slot shape here, also fully constrained and located and sized here. So rectangular patterns are used when you want to create copies of geometry that are all in line with one another. So a linear version of copies, so to say. So you can find the pattern section here just about midway through the ribbon. So I'm in my sketch tab, and about halfway down the ribbon here you can see the section called pattern, and we're going over the rectangular option. So left click to activate that, and you'll notice a couple of things in the pop-up here. So to start with, we have to choose our geometry. So just make sure this button is blue to make sure it's activated, and then choose whichever geometry it is you want to pattern. Now with a rectangular pattern, or any of these patterns actually, you can choose connected parts, which I just did here. So all of these lines and circles, or arcs here, sorry, lines and arcs are all connected, so I'm going to pattern those. You could also choose unconnected sketches as well. So if I had any other features I wanted to pattern, I could select all of those right now. Once you've selected all of the geometry you want to pattern, you now have to pick directions, and you'll notice there are direction 1 and direction 2 options here. Let's start with direction 1. So I'm going to select the little arrow underneath direction 1, and then you actually have to pick a line in order to tell the program which direction you want this to move. So I'm going to pick the top horizontal face of my rectangle here. You'll notice when you pick it, these options are no longer grayed out. You can change them. Also, there's a little green arrow that pops up on your screen here, and it gives you a visual saying, hey, it's going to move in this direction. We can follow the direction of the arrow. If this was going the wrong direction, if you actually wanted it to go, instead of going from left to right, you wanted it to go from right to left, underneath direction 1, you could choose this little green or blue-red flip arrow here, and it would flip the direction to go in the opposite way. In this case, I want it to go from left to right so that all of my little slots stay within my rectangle here. And then we're going to come underneath direction 1 and just change these options. So the first option is number of items, and if you can see it, it's very, very faint, but there is a gray outline here showing me a preview of what this is going to be doing. So I'm going to type in 8 items. So I want 8 of these little slots to be patterned in a line here. Now, underneath your number of items, you have distance between each item. So this isn't overall distance from start to finish. This is distance from one item to the next adjacent item here. So I'm going to change this. Let's try 1.5. No, let's try 1.75. I like that. So we're going to go with 1.75 inches between each item. And if you can see my preview now, you can see the spacing between each of these items, and you can see the little gray outline showing me where each of my slots is going to go. So right now, because I've only chosen one direction, all of my little slot sketches are all going just horizontally in a single line. Now, the beautiful thing about the rectangular pattern is you're not stuck with just going in a single line. You can also select how many rows you want, as well as how many columns. So with our direction 2 option now, I want you to select the arrow underneath direction 2, and then you have to pick another line to show which direction direction 2 is going to go in. So I'm going to select the vertical portion of my rectangle here, and again we get the little green arrow popping up showing us which direction is going to be going. Now in this case, I can see my little previews. They're actually running off of the top horizontal line here on my rectangle, which is not what I want. So I'm going to flip direction 2 to keep these sketches again within my rectangle here. Now I'm going to choose number of items, and I want these again to stay in this rectangle, so I'm just going to leave it at 2, but I guess just to show you the difference here, if you choose 3, 4, 5, however many you want with the preview here, you can see it will create that many rows. Okay, now let's do spacing. So right now they're all overlapping, which is making this hard to see. So let's just space these out a little bit further. I'm going to go with 2.5. So I'm going to go with 2.5 inches between each item. Now this is a little more clear to see what's going on. So we have our little gray previews popping up here, and right now, because I still have 5 rows put in, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows with our little preview slots on here. And you'll notice one thing here. You'll notice that each row has the same number of columns that we put in when we put in 8 items for direction 1. So when we set up direction 1 with 8 items across here, and then we set up direction 2 with 5 rows going down here, each row has 8 slots in it. So it's going to create a rectangle, hence its name. So I'm going to change direction 2 just to 2 items so that all of my slots fit within here, and go ahead and click OK. So there we have it. We can see they're all fully constrained. Each one of these sketches is black, meaning that it has all the constraints on it for size and location needed. And that's because the pattern knows to space them all a specific distance apart and a specific distance apart, and it keeps them all in line with one another to locate them. So I'm going to finish sketch and just click extrude. So now these rectangular patterned sketches are ready to use with 3D features. So I'm going to select my great sort of shape here and extrude it. So there we go, we have our finished shape, and if I spin this, you can see the holes go right through the back side as well. So that's how you can use a rectangular pattern in a 2D sketch. Now let's talk about this with 3D features now. So I'm going to, again, edit my sketch 1, and we're going to look at this top rectangle now. And I'm going to just create a shape up here. So let's go ahead, let's draw another slot up here. And I'm going to just draw it arbitrarily sized for right now. Click Finish Sketch. I'm going to extrude that little slot shape through all. There we go. So now we have a hole through our rectangle here. Now we can rectangular pattern sketches, or sorry, extrusions like this. So if I go up to, again, my ribbon here, and this time I'm in my 3D model tab, the pattern section is this tiny little section way over here, and grab the rectangular pattern option. This time for features, instead of grabbing parts of a sketch, you're going to grab an extrusion. So I'm going to grab it over here actually in my model browser, and I'm going to grab extrusion 3 because I can see it's highlighting, and that's the one that has that hole cut out. So I'm going to grab extrusion 3, and then the rest of this is kind of the same as with the 2D sketch. So we're going to select direction 1, pick our direction. In this case, I'm going to flip direction and place my items. And I'm just going to use the same settings we did for our 2D sketch below, even though my slot's a different size here. We'll see if it works. So direction 1 is going from left to right, and I'm going to place 8 items in, spaced at 1.75 between each. Now you'll notice that with the 3-dimensional rectangular pattern option, you do have the option down here to change the settings here. So for instance, spacing is the spacing between each of those 8 items at 1.75 inches. We can change it to distance, and then distance is actually going to say, okay, from the first item to the last item is going to be whatever value I put in here. So you do have the option here to play with these and change them, which you didn't have with the 2D sketch. I'm going to stick with spacing here. Now under direction 2, I'm going to choose direction 2, choose the left-hand side of my rectangle here, put in my spacing. So I'm going to go 2.5 inches, and again I'm going to leave it as spacing, which is the distance between each individual item. And number of rows I'm going to leave as 2 as well, because if I go over 2, you'll see they actually jump outside of my shape here. And click OK. And there you have it. So we end up with pretty much the same idea as with the 2D sketch rectangular pattern, but in this case we patterned our 3D feature by patterning our extrusion 3, which was the cutout slot here. So let's do that one more time. So with both of these first two shapes here, we actually just edited my original sketch, sketch 1. I'm actually going to turn off the visibility for sketch 1 now. And let's actually create a brand new sketch and feature here on this last rectangle. So I'm going to start a 2D sketch. I'm going to start it on my, there we go, my XY plane. So I'm working in the middle of this rectangle. I'm just going to create my shape. Oh, what do I want to do this time? Oh, let's just stick with the slot. Center to center slot. Actually, let's do an ellipse. There we go. Let's mix it up. So I'm going to create an ellipse here. Click Finish Sketch. Extrude. I'm going to extrude symmetrically. And I just want it to be a little bit smaller than these ones. So my rectangle was extruded 1.5 inches. I'm going to extrude my little ellipse here 1 inch just so we can see a bit of a difference. Okay, now in this case, I created volume when I extruded this. Okay, so whereas above here we subtracted volume by when we extruded this original slot and then patterned it. This one's different. So I'm going to rectangular pattern. I'm going to grab my extrusion 4, which is my little ellipse tooth here. Pick my direction 1, flip direction, put in my spacing. I'm going to go with a little bit more. 0.65 looks pretty good. And then for number of items, we're going to go from left to right here. So let's go with 25. Little too many. 21. We're going to go with 21. All right, so we can see again our little preview here in lime green of what we're going to be getting. It's kind of like little gear teeth, sort of, made out of an ellipse here. And in this case, I'm only going to use direction 1. So when you create a rectangular pattern, you do not have to use both direction 1 and direction 2. You can specify just a single direction if all you want to do is pattern your features in a single line, like I do here. So I'm going to click OK. And there we have it. It's my very oddly shaped looking rack here with gear teeth on it, sort of. But you can see that we don't have to create rows. We can get away with just creating columns by rectangular patterning in only one direction. So that's how we can use the 2D and 3D rectangular pattern to pattern either sketch features or pattern extrusion features, whether they are cutout features or whether we're joining to add more volume to our shape.